They slammed him to the ground, handcuffed him like a criminal. But he was just an 11-year-old boy walking home from school. They didn't ask questions. They saw his skin, not his innocence. But what they didn't know was who his father was. And that mistake? It would expose a truth this town had buried for generations. It was just another afternoon in Cedar Heights, a neighborhood that looked like a painting. Sunlight glinted off the windshields of parked cars, kids shouted from a schoolyard a few blocks away, and sprinklers ticked rhythmically over perfect lawns. Nothing about it screamed danger. A boy was walking down the sidewalk, hoodie up, backpack slung low, sneakers brushing the curb. His shadow was small, his steps calm. He looked like any other kid going home from school. But for reasons he couldn't see, someone was watching. Behind tinted windows, a cruiser crawled down the opposite side of the street. No sirens, no lights, just watching. He didn't notice it at first. His earbuds were in, just music. That's all. Then, a sudden shout ripped the calm apart. "Hey, stop right there!" The boy turned, confused. 2 squad cars now, one coming from behind, another sliding across the intersection like a movie scene gone wrong. Before he could even ask what was happening, 2 officers were out with weapons drawn, not guns yet, just hands on holsters, voices sharp like knives. "Put your hands up." What?" he stammered, pulling one earbud out. "Hands up now!" The bag dropped. His small hands rose. Neighbors peeked through windows. A dog barked, but no one stepped outside. He tried to speak, to explain. "I'm coming from school. Get on your knees." A hand grabbed him from behind. His knees scraped the pavement. Cold steel wrapped around his wrists. The cuffs clicked, tight and final. The kind of sound that tells a boy, this isn't a misunderstanding, this is real. They flipped him over, patted him down. Someone dumped his backpack on the sidewalk. Out fell a math textbook, a crushed PB&J sandwich, a crumpled permission slip. No weapon, no cash, no mask, just a quiet kid. Suddenly, an enemy. One officer muttered into his radio, "Black male, about 11 to 12, gray hoodie, jeans, fits the description." Another officer looked down at the boy, who was now breathing fast, eyes wide, and asked coldly, "What's your name?" He answered softly. Too softly. "Speak up." "Jamal, my name is Jamal." The officer scoffed. Figures. The words stung harder than the cuffs. They yanked him to his feet, shoved him toward the cruiser. One neighbor finally opened their door but didn't step out. Just filmed. Jamal's voice cracked. "Please, call my dad. He's important." They laughed. "Yeah, kid. Everyone's dad is important when they're in cuffs." He was pushed into the back of the cruiser. The doors slammed. The smell of old vinyl and sweat hit him instantly. No one spoke to him. No one read his rights. They drove in silence. The radio crackled with chatter, but it all blurred in his ears. His heart pounded. His mouth was dry. He tried to remember what his dad always said. Stay calm, stay quiet, do what they say. But his father never prepared him for this. Inside the precinct, the fluorescent lights were too bright. The floor too cold. He sat on a bench, wrists still cuffed, surrounded by grown men in other cells, others pacing, one shouting at an officer. He was the only child there, the youngest by years, and no one cared. He whispered again, "Please, call my dad." No one listened. Miles away, Marcus Carter was in court, black robe over his shoulders, gavel in hand. He was issuing a ruling when his phone buzzed. He never answered during session, but the second buzz was different. His private line. He excused himself, took the call. The voice on the other end was shaking. "Judge Carter, it's Jamal. He's at the precinct. They arrested him." Everything stopped. The air went still. "What did you just say?" The gavel hit the desk. The robe hit the chair. Marcus didn't wait for protocol, didn't care about decorum. He walked out with fire in his eyes. At the station, Jamal sat quietly, eyes red, cheeks damp, still cuffed. And then the door opened. The officer at the desk glanced up lazily. "Can I help you?" He froze. Marcus Carter didn't yell. He didn't curse. He didn't raise a fist. He only asked one question. "Where is my son?" The air inside the precinct changed the moment Judge Marcus Carter stepped through the door. No uniform was safe from the weight of his stare. Conversations fell silent. Officers stood a little straighter. A few recognized his face from courtrooms, from headlines, from rulings that shaped careers and buried scandals. But none of them knew this version of him. This wasn't the composed judge with the practiced tone. This was a father who had just learned his son had been handcuffed like a criminal in public, without cause, without question. Marcus's voice was calm, but the fury beneath each word threatened to split the walls. "Where is my son?" The desk sergeant fumbled. We didn't know it was your boy, sir. We thought..." "You thought what? That a young black boy in a hoodie matched your stereotype and that was good enough?" No one answered. One officer backed out of the room. Marcus turned to the nearest holding area. And there, sitting alone, his hands still cuffed, his eyes swollen from crying, was Jamal. The boy didn't speak. He didn't cry out. He just locked eyes with his father. Eyes that had always looked up to him, now filled with fear and confusion and the quiet question, "Why did they do this to me?" Marcus stepped in. "Unlock him, now!" The officer hesitated, 1 second too long. Marcus repeated, "Unlock my son." Keys rattled. The cuffs came off. Jamal fell into his father's arms. The hug was tight, long, and silent, but the air around them boiled. The rest of the precinct watched in discomfort. But Marcus wasn't done. Not even close. He stood with his son behind him. And then he spoke. Not in anger, but in authority. "You will provide every report, every body cam, every recording, every witness statement. You will give me the name of every officer involved in this illegal arrest, and you will do it now." "Sir, we thought he matched." "You didn't think. You profiled. You violated civil rights. And now you're going to be part of a national headline." Phones were already out. Someone had recognized him. The video of Jamal's arrest, the one filmed by the neighbor, was spreading. By evening, it had 2.4 million views. The story was out. News vans parked outside the Carter residence that night. Helicopters hovered. The mayor called. So did the governor. What started as an ordinary day had erupted into a political storm. Inside their home, Jamal sat on the couch, knees drawn to his chest. Marcus paced the living room talking to a civil rights lawyer. "He's 11, Marcus said. "And they treated him like a felon." The lawyer nodded. "We'll file an injunction. Demand every detail. They'll regret this." But Marcus wasn't seeking revenge. He was hunting justice. Jamal's mother returned home from her shift at the hospital and dropped to her knees when she saw her son. She didn't ask questions. She didn't cry. She just held him until he whispered, "They said I looked like someone." The mother looked up at Marcus, her voice trembling. "They didn't see a boy. They saw a threat." Marcus nodded. "Not anymore." The next morning, Marcus held a press conference. Cameras pointed. Microphones buzzed. The nation was watching. He stepped forward and spoke not as a judge, not as a father, but as a voice for every child who had been silenced. "My son, Jamal Carter, was illegally detained, handcuffed, and humiliated in public because he fit a description. He was profiled based on the color of his skin. He is 11 years old. He has no criminal record. He was walking home from school. He paused. Cameras clicked. This isn't just about my son. This is about every boy and girl who has been taught to fear the very people who are supposed to protect them. We will not let this go quietly. We are filing a federal civil rights lawsuit, and we are demanding change. The questions came in a flurry, but Marcus didn't flinch. Reporters shouted, "Judge Carter, do you think your position influenced how this is being handled?" "Yes," he said, "and that's the problem. If this had been someone else's son, a name you didn't know, would we even be here today?" Behind the scenes, the officers who arrested Jamal faced internal investigation. Body cam footage showed what the world feared. No aggression from Jamal, no probable cause, no justification. One officer had joked, "He looks like the one from the skate park video?" Another laughed. "Yeah, close enough." The footage sparked outrage. National outlets picked it up. Hashtags exploded. Justice for Jamal. Just he was just a boy. Just Cedar Heights truth. The community mobilized. Churches held vigils. Students walked out. Teachers shared stories of other kids harassed by law enforcement. And Marcus? He wasn't done. He met with civil rights leaders. He gave testimony in city council hearings. He demanded body cam reform, youth protection protocols, community review boards. He became a symbol. But inside, he was still just a father, trying to make his son feel safe again. Jamal refused to walk alone, refused to wear his hoodie, refused to go back to school. One night, Marcus sat with him in bed. "I'm scared, Dad." "I know," Marcus said, "but we're not going to let fear win. You are not what they said you are. You are more." Jamal looked up. "Promise? I swear." And in that quiet moment, at far from headlines and hashtags, a father rebuilt his son's strength, one word at a time. But far across the city, not everyone was applauding. A rogue group of officers, angry at the backlash, bitter about the spotlight, started talking in private chats, whispering about setting the record straight. "This judge thinks he's better than us. Next time, he won't see it coming." A storm was building. The sun hadn't yet risen over Cedar Heights when the first threat arrived. A single, unmarked envelope slid under the front door of the Carter home. No return address, no postage. Just one sentence typed in bold black ink on a slip of paper. "You made a mistake. Drop the case, or your boy disappears for real." Marcus found it first. He didn't wake his wife or Jamal. He simply stood at the kitchen counter, staring at the message while the coffee brewed, his fingers tightening around the edges until they tore. The fear was real, cold, and heavy. But beneath it, rage simmered like lava. He'd faced threats before. As a judge, he was no stranger to hate mail. But this was personal, direct, and unthinkable. He quietly installed new cameras that morning. Security doubled. His brother, a retired Marine, came to stay in the guest room. Jamal wasn't allowed to walk alone anymore. He was driven, guarded, shadowed. The case was moving fast. Lawyers filed civil suits. The Justice Department opened an inquiry, and 3 officers were placed on unpaid leave. Body cam footage had ignited a national firestorm. But justice comes at a cost. At Cedar Heights Elementary, whispers swirled. Some kids stopped talking to Jamal. Their parents, uncomfortable with the spotlight, pulled back. One boy shouted across the cafeteria, "You got my dad suspended, liar!" Jamal flinched. He hadn't done anything wrong, but the world treated him like he had. He ate lunch alone that day. At home, Marcus tried to shield him, tried to act normal, tried to make dinner like before, but the weight of the situation clung to every meal, every quiet evening. Then came the second message. This time, it was a text. Anonymous number. "If you love your son, stop." It included a photo. Jamal, outside the courthouse, stepping into a car. Someone was watching. Marcus brought it to the police. Internal affairs took over. The FBI stepped in. The judge now had federal protection. But that only made the whispers grow louder. The badge wasn't always the shield it claimed to be. One night, Marcus found Jamal sitting in the dark, clutching the baseball glove his grandfather gave him. "I just want to be normal again, Dad," he whispered. "I know," Marcus said, "and I promise you, one day you will." But as he tucked Jamal in, Marcus knew things might never be the same. Because outside, in the shadows of Cedar Heights, a small but furious faction was gathering. Not everyone wanted justice. Not everyone welcomed the spotlight. And some, especially the officers who felt exposed, wanted to make Marcus pay. They called themselves the Brotherhood. And they didn't just want the case dropped. They wanted a reckoning. The Brotherhood met in a barn outside city limits. What began as a whisper group on encrypted apps had become a full-blown underground organization. It wasn't just officers, ex-cops, disgraced deputies, and local enforcers with private vendettas attended. Each had a reason to hate Marcus Carter. Each wanted blood, not justice. Their leader, ex-detective Roy Granger, once had everything: a badge, respect, and power. But after a corruption scandal years ago, one where Marcus was the presiding judge, Granger lost it all. Disbarred and humiliated, he'd simmered in silence. When Jamal's case made headlines, it was Granger who decided this was the moment to strike back. "They think they're above the law," he snarled in the flickering light. That judge, his brat, his FBI friends, we let them take one of ours and we lose the town. Who's with me? They raised their hands, a dozen men in the dark, pledging vengeance. Back at home, Marcus noticed more things out of place. Trash cans knocked over, the back gate unlocked. Once, they came home to find their family cat missing, and then returned with a collar that wasn't its own. The message was clear: we can get close. Media coverage exploded. Protesters gathered outside City Hall. Supporters and detractors clashed online and in the streets. The mayor held a press conference urging calm. But Marcus knew better. Calm was the eye of the storm. The Brotherhood escalated. What began as threats turned into actions. One evening, as Marcus drove Jamal home from therapy, a black SUV trailed them. No plates, no lights. When Marcus turned sharply, it followed. He swerved through neighborhoods, taking wild turns. At a red light, the SUV bumped their rear bumper. A warning. Jamal screamed. Marcus filed the report. The FBI said they were working on leads. But weeks passed. No arrests, no suspects. Inside the Carter home, tension thickened. Olivia, Marcus's wife, began keeping a bat near the bed. She jumped at knocks. She barely slept. And Jamal, he stopped speaking at school. He drew pictures instead. Dark, twisted sketches of faceless men with shadows for eyes. Then came the break-in. 3:14 a.m. Security cameras caught two figures in hoodies trying the side door. They disabled one sensor, pried open the back panel. Marcus, already awake and on edge, grabbed his pistol and crept downstairs. He didn't shoot, but he shouted loud enough for them to flee. Cops arrived too late. Again. The media circus reached its peak. Marcus finally agreed to an exclusive interview. He sat across from a nationally known anchor, his face taut, voice firm. "My son is not a threat. He's a child, and we won't be intimidated into silence." The interview went viral, but it also triggered the Brotherhood's final plan. 1 week later, Jamal vanished. It was supposed to be a normal Monday. Olivia dropped him off at school. He waved, smiled, but by third period, he was gone. Nowhere. Not in the bathroom, not outside, not in the building. Security footage showed nothing unusual until someone noticed a janitor's cart near the service exit. Inside was a duffel bag, and under it, a hat Jamal always wore. Amber Alert triggered. FBI swarmed the scene. Drones, helicopters, roadblocks. And then a burner phone buzzed to life on Marcus's desk. A voice, gravelly, confident. "You have one shot, Judge. Drop the case by midnight, or your son never sees daylight again." Darkness had settled over Cedar Heights like a thick fog, but in the Carter household, not a single light was off. The air was heavy with dread. The once peaceful home now resembled a command center. Laptops open, phones ringing, agents whispering strategy. Olivia paced the hallway, clutching the last photograph of Jamal, his smile still vibrant, frozen in innocence. The deadline loomed, midnight, and with every passing second, hope teetered on a knife's edge. The Brotherhood had Jamal. Marcus Carter, now flanked by a federal crisis team, stared at a digital map spread across the dining table. Every highway, every barn, every rental property within a 100-mile radius had been flagged. But the town's deep-rooted rot, a web of silent allies and corrupt networks, compromis, kept the Brotherhood one step ahead. The burner phone buzzed again. Marcus picked it up, his voice firm despite the tremor in his soul. "Where's my son?" The voice on the other end was masked, distorted. "You have 90 minutes. Hold that press conference. Drop the charges. Make it public, or Jamal never walks free again." Then, silence. The agent sprang into action, tracing the signal, pinging towers. But it was routed through a stolen satellite phone, dumped minutes later in a dumpster behind a gas station. A dead trail, time blurred. At 11:12 p.m., a breakthrough. Agent Ramirez burst into the room, breathless. "We found something." An old utility shed on the edge of the forest, recently leased under a fake name. A tip from a former Brotherhood associate pressured into cooperation. The location was remote, unmonitored, and outside the grid. A convoy was assembled in minutes. Marcus demanded to go. No one dared stop him. As they approached the site, a thick mist blanketed the road. The convoy cut their lights. Silence fell. The shed stood crooked and still beneath a dying oak, moonlight slicing through its rusted roof. No guards, no movement, just a quiet that screamed ambush. Agents surrounded the perimeter. Thermal scans showed a single heat signature inside. Small, child-sized. Marcus's heart pounded. "We go in 3, 2, 1. Boom. The door was rammed open, guns drawn, shouts echoed. Inside, a chair, a boy, bound, gagged, eyes wide with terror. "Jamal!" Marcus raced forward. The agents cleared the area, checked for traps. Jamal was alive, shaken but unharmed. As Marcus cradled his son, Jamal sobbed into his chest. "I knew you'd come, Dad. I knew it. I knew..." But the danger wasn't over. A distant engine roared. Granger had been watching. A mile out, binoculars in hand, he saw the breach. Fury twisted his scarred face. "Pull back!" he growled to his men. They weren't supposed to find him. His last card. A final assault. 12:02 a.m. As the FBI loaded Jamal into a secure vehicle, headlights emerged from the tree line. A black truck, then another, and another. 3 vehicles, 5 men, armed. Bullets lit up the night. The convoy returned fire. Agents dove for cover. Marcus shielded Jamal behind the SUV. "Stay down!" Olivia, listening from home, dropped to her knees in prayer. The firefight raged for minutes that felt like hours, and then silence. 2 Brotherhood members were dead, 1 wounded. The rest fled into the woods, swallowed by darkness. Granger vanished, but Jamal was safe. Days later, the world watched as Marcus Carter, with Jamal beside him, stood at the courthouse steps. No longer just a father, no longer just a judge. He was a symbol. "I stand here not as a man seeking revenge," he said, voice strong and resonant, "but as a father demanding justice. This will not be buried. My son will not be another statistic. We will hold them all accountable. Cheers erupted, and across the nation something stirred. The reckoning had begun. The chaos had quieted, but the echoes remained. 3 weeks after the raid, the town of Cedar Heights still bore scars. Boarded up windows, shattered trust, and whispers on every corner. The Brotherhood had gone underground, but its remnants lingered like shadows in the alleys and under the breaths of those too afraid to speak. Yet, something stronger had begun to take root: resilience. The Carter family tried to reclaim normalcy, but the definition of normal had changed forever. Jamal didn't sleep well anymore. His dreams were riddled with memories: the dim shed, the muffled voices, the sound of footsteps that weren't meant to save. His mother stayed close, her hugs tighter, longer, her voice quieter. Marcus watched over them both like a fortress of flesh and bone, scarred but standing. The trial began on a cold Monday morning. The courthouse was surrounded by media, by protesters, by believers and doubters. But Marcus walked in with his head high, not as the judge, but as the father of a child whose innocence had nearly been buried under the weight of systemic hate. Inside the courtroom, silence reigned. Granger had finally been captured after a manhunt across state lines. His smugness remained, but so did the evidence: overwhelming, damning, undeniable. When Jamal entered to testify, the room held its breath. He stood behind the witness box, hands trembling, voice fragile but determined. "They put handcuffs on me," he said, tears threatening but held back, "because of my skin, because they thought I didn't belong. But I do. I'm American, I'm a kid, and I want to be safe like everyone else." No one moved, no one spoke. The silence was respect. When Granger tried to glare at the boy, Jamal didn't flinch. He'd seen real fear. This was just a man already defeated. The conviction came swift. Granger and 4 others received maximum sentences. The department underwent a massive restructuring. Cedar Heights hired a new chief of police, a woman of color with a background in reform and a record of integrity. And then, Marcus took the final step. He resigned from his judgeship. Not in retreat, but to lead something greater: a statewide commission for police accountability and youth protection, bearing Jamal's name. The Jamal Carter Initiative. It focused on legal reform, community training, and support for families caught in the same nightmare. What began as tragedy had become a movement. 1 year later, Jamal stood at a podium, surrounded by classmates and teachers. He held a certificate in his hand, not for grades, not for attendance, but for courage. "This isn't about being brave," he said, smiling now. "This is about not letting fear change who you are. They tried to make me small, but I'm not. None of us are." The applause lasted minutes. Marcus and Olivia, sitting in the front row, held hands. Behind them, the nation watched, because from a single act of cruelty had come a tidal wave of reckoning, and from a boy in handcuffs had risen a voice that would echo for generations. Only amplified his voice. What was meant to break him built a movement instead. One boy became the face of a nation's reckoning. One family became a shield for countless others. And justice, once buried, now walks boldly in the daylight.